All right, it's professional Scrum trainers Ryan Ripley and Todd Miller back with another video on Scrum. This week, Todd, we've got an interesting question, especially with the release of the new Scrum Guide. We got asked, it seems like it's deceptively simple, right? But what is a sprint? What's your take? Yeah, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so maybe let's just start with talking about the fact that in Scrum there's 5 events, right? I think that the sprint is probably the natural starting place to start a discussion. So this is a great question, actually. The way we like to describe it is that the sprint is a container event. I think maybe to simplify that conversation, we could talk about it as a piece of Tupperware, right? We take every other event and put it in this piece of Tupperware, and that piece of Tupperware is this thing we're calling a sprint, kind of to bring it back to our topic here, is 1 calendar month or less, right? And this sprint contains formal opportunities within the other events to inspect and adapt Scrum artifacts, right? So Scrum is based off of empirical process control, inspection, adaptation, and transparency being the pillars of empirical process control. And the sprint offers us this boundary where these formal events and these formal opportunities to enable empiricism occur. What else should we add here, Ryan?
I like this time box comment that you made, that it's less than a calendar month. It's like an enabling constraint, right? It really forces focus. It forces almost like a forcing function to get to delivery. In fact, I think the purposes of a sprint is really important. It enables predictability by ensuring that empiricism, as you mentioned, happens as we progress towards a sprint goal. And if you read the new Scrum Guide, this is an update, right? The product goal is a commitment that comes from the product backlog. And so we're making sure sprint over sprint, we're progressing towards that overall product goal. And we've got to do that at least every calendar month, right? Something else that got slightly revised are the rules of a sprint. And I think we should talk about those really quick and make sure that those are very clear to the listeners and viewers as well. We cannot make any changes during a sprint that would endanger the sprint goal.
Another new commitment, the sprint goal.
Yeah.
So we've talked extensively about the sprint goal in the past. In fact, we refer to the Scrum Guide 2017, where the sprint goal is in there mentioned 27 times. Now, we're happy about this, right, Ryan? You and I are ecstatic of the fact that the sprint goal is an official commitment that's attached to the sprint backlog. Now, we say that nothing should endanger the sprint goal. I think this shows a lot of flexibility, though, with what happens in a sprint, don't you?
Yeah, emerging work, emerging practices, emerging ideas, all happening throughout a sprint. We're constantly refining what we're doing, the way we're doing it, and how we're going to deliver. So,
yeah, can I touch on something here that you and I say all the time about the sprint goal too? Well, I think the sprint goal is worthy of another video, but I'm just going to say right now, we say this all the time: no commas, no ands, no run-on sentences. The sprint goal is very clear and explicit in what you're hoping to achieve in that sprint. Right?
And as far as our sprint goes, everybody, we do not put it in danger. Another rule of the sprint that I think we should understand very clearly is that quality does not decrease. And again, this touches on another commitment, one of the new commitments in the new Scrum Guide, Todd, the definition of done.
I know. I really wish I had one of those party poppers right now, because as much as I love the sprint goal being a commitment, the definition of done, as you know me so well, Ryan, I'd be pulling party poppers right into our camera, being so excited about that being a commitment.
It is awesome. And I think it just reinforces this idea that quality isn't optional.
It is not.
We're very explicit. It cannot decrease. We cannot put undone work into a sprint increment. We cannot do anything that would diminish quality. The next rule, the product backlog is refined as needed. So this is back to your comment, Todd, about emergence.
Yeah.
The work is constantly changing. The product backlog is refined all through the sprint. So we're learning about the work by doing the work, right? And as we learn by doing, we update. And so work is emergent, right?
This also kind of reminds me with this too, is that, as developers, we call them developers now, right? As they're working towards this sprint goal, and it's a good idea to have them step outside the bounds of that area of focus just a little bit to look at what might happen in the future, right? And so we're looking outside of this and trying to adapt and understand what might be happening in the future, because that could change our decisions today. So that's just an important and interesting thing. Yet, I think another video we could probably do on product backlog.
I think there's endless opportunity.
Endless. Yeah.
The final rule I think we should cover about the sprint is that scope. So basically, the sprint backlog can be clarified and renegotiated with the product owner as more is learned through doing the work. So again, work is emergent. You cannot plan complex problems and solutions and work perfectly. So stop trying, right? We say this all the time. You can't plan complexity perfectly, so let the work emerge as you learn and you change and you inspect and you adapt, right? Empiricism is here to help combat the need to plan complexity perfectly.
Yeah, I love this one too, because this just shows that, we're coping with complexity here. We don't know what we don't know. And we've all been through these moments where even if you think of a home improvement project where you look up at the ceiling and you're like, it's just a little leak, right? Sound familiar, Ryan? It's just a little bit of a leak. And then you open it up and you realize you've got weeks worth of work to do.
So, that's how every one of my home improvement projects go, Todd. And so let's recap real quick before we leave. We are talking about what is a sprint. The time box is less than a calendar month. It is the container event where all the emerging and changing product development efforts have to occur. So within that sprint, right? And we're trying to enable predictability through the use of a sprint so that empiricism happens and we can keep an eye on our progress towards our product goal, right? And so that is a sprint in a nutshell. We're going to come back with some more videos about expanding these ideas. But for now, Todd, I think that's a good answer for the sprint. We would like to ask, what are your thoughts on the sprint?
Yeah.
For all the viewers out there, let us know what you think in the comments, and leave us a comment. What are your thoughts? What can we talk about with the sprint going forward? And we hope this was helpful and brought forward
probably what we missed, right?
Yeah.
We could do in 7 minutes just describing something as deep as this one.
Leave us your questions and they might turn into a future video.
Right on. Yeah.
All right, Todd, for Agile for Humans, this is going to be another What's Up with Scrum kind of video, right? You'll see some more from us in the future. But for now, that is what is a sprint? And we'll check back in with everyone later.
Cheers.